Maybe you're here and you're wondering, what's the story with the pastor wearing a suit? You see what I did there? What's the story? But anyway, what's the story with the pastor wearing a suit? I don't normally wear a suit. And if you remember, the last time I wore a suit was because I couldn't find any clean clothes. So I just grabbed a suit. But you'll be happy to know that this time around, it's not because of that. I had clean clothes, so that's all right. But I am wearing a suit as an illustration, a visual symbol of what's coming. So just this last week, me, Aaron, and David, the guys who were playing the guitar up here, I should have told you I was going to say this story, but we went to watch a movie. And in this movie, all the characters were wearing these types of suits. Like, I thought it was maybe a fashion statement. I thought it was cool, so I thought I would emulate them and also wear the suit and the tie. But, so this was an action-packed movie, and it was fast. It got all the elements you need, the slow motion, the guns, the car chases, the motorbikes, everything was in. And then at one point, something unbelievable happened in the movie. It was even unbelievable even for a movie. So one of the people in the movie had a gun and shot someone at close range. And then this person lifted up their jacket and covered themselves like this. And they were uninjured, they were not hurt, they were not dead. So this confused me. So I turned over to my left to Aaron, and I said, Aaron, what's just happened there? And I tell you, with a straight face, without hesitation, he just looked at me and he said, bulletproof suit. And I just took it. I just went, of course, makes sense. And then I went on watching the movie, and everybody was wearing these suits, and they were using these suits to block bullets. But then at some point, like 30 minutes in, like my mind is slow, right? 30 minutes in, I was like, wait a minute. Even for a movie, come on now. A suit that blocks a bullet? Come on. Somebody is telling a lie. But then, when I was thinking, I was like, why did that make sense? When Aaron told me bulletproof suit, it made perfect sense. And with everything that was going on, it made perfect sense. This is because the writers and the directors did a very good did a very good job of telling us the story. And in this story, there's a suit, or these suits that block bullets, and it made perfect sense. Although it wasn't real, though. Like in real life, if I go out with my suit, like today, and there's somebody out there with a gun, and I do that, how's that going to work out? By the way, please don't try that at home. Please don't try that. It doesn't work. But I'm just here to tell you that in life, right, there are writers and directors that are selling you a lie. They're selling you a lie when it comes to the meaning of life. They're selling you a lie about what on earth are you here for. And we buy it. We just say, of course, makes sense. But it is a lie. And these writers and directors, they might be the movies you're watching. It might be the music, the books you're reading. It might be your friends. It might be even yourself. You are telling yourself a lie. But you just don't see it. You just don't see it. It's like me going out there and somebody shooting me in the leg. Like, oh, man, I've been shot. Then, instead of seeing that the suit doesn't block bullets, I just go out, you know what? I'm going to change out my suit. I bought this suit from Dunn's. I actually don't know where I bought this one from. But let's say if this suit is from Dunn's, I just go change out this suit and go get another suit. And I'll be like, oh, maybe this suit will work. But that is just telling yourself a lie, because the suit was never meant to block bullets. So this is the same when it comes to the meaning of life. We tell ourselves we got to find ourselves. We got to fulfill ourselves. We got to go after our dreams. It's about our careers, our families, about money, power, success. We've got all these things that we keep telling ourselves that it will fulfill us. But it doesn't. You just have to listen to the tragedy stories that happen time and time again. People get to the top. They achieve everything they ever wanted. And when they get there, they are empty. They are dissatisfied. And they know that life is not all about this. It's got to be greater than this. But we think we know better. And we think life is about money. We think life is about fame, success, and all these things. But that is just telling ourselves a lie. So what we're going to do in this sermon, one thing that I just want us to understand is this. When it comes to answering this question, we cannot create the answer. I know if you like watching Disney, you know this message is prominent, that look inside yourself and you can create some sort of meaning. But that's not right. You've got to discover the purpose of your life. So if we go on the next slide, what most people do, right? They speculate, they guess, they theorize, they have all conjectures of the meaning of life. And in our story, that's what Brian was doing. He was just guessing, going through life just guessing. You know, you've got your philosophers, they're the ones that theorize. Then you got your friends, they're the ones that just guess. And then you got your TVs, they're the ones that are just speculating. But that doesn't bring the answer. But when you go to the next slide, we've got to swap out the speculation and go for revelation. We don't need any more speculation from people who don't really know what life is all about. We need revelation. And it's, as you were listening to Brian, when he swapped out all that other stuff that he was into, and he picked up the Bible, and then he learned about the God of the Bible, that's when things started to click. So don't be looking in the wrong place. Pick up the Bible and read. And when you go to the next slide, the very first sentence when you get into the Bible is this. So I had this, I love this verse so much because this is the only verse that I knew for a very, very long time. You know, go to Sunday school and they always do this random quiz, and that verse always came to my rescue. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then when you go on to verse 27, it tells us, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And then when you go to the Psalms, it tells us this, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. You see, if you want to know the meaning and the purpose of life, you got to pick up the owner's manual. And that is the Bible. This is where you find the answer. One writer by the name Mark Twain had this quote. He said, the two most important days in your life is the day that you're born and the day that you find out why you were born. You see, meaning cannot be created. You can't create meaning. You've got to discover it. Most of you have a smartphone in your pockets or your purses. But imagine you're in a 20-year coma. So this brings you back to 2003. This is before the iPhone. This is before the smartphones as we know them. So you wake up from your coma and you find this block-looking thing beside your bed. You can try and guess as to the meaning and purpose of this thing, right? Or you can maybe try and ask your coma buddy who's also woken up from a coma, the odds, right? You can also ask them for the meaning or the purpose. You can continue to theorize and speculate and all this conjecture. Or you can pick up the manual that is right beside the smartphone, and it will tell you as to the purpose and meaning of life. And this is what the Bible is. If we want to find out the meaning of life, we've got to go to the Bible. And actually, so what we're going to do in this sermon, I'm going to look at some common things that people go for, the things that people think that life is all about, these things. And then we'll go to actually what life is all about. So funny enough, actually, we're going to be in Ecclesiastes. And me and Jonathan hadn't actually coordinated on this, but God wanted you guys to be in Ecclesiastes. So we're in Ecclesiastes today. So in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 1, he tells us this. And I say to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. Then on the next slide, laughter, I say, it is madness. What does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine, embracing folly, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. You see, Ecclesiastes is written by, just call him the preacher or the teacher. And what he wanted to do was try and figure out what life is all about, the meaning and purpose of life. So what he did was try to do experiments. So he did experiments and himself is a lab rat and trying all these different things to see if life is all about this. So the first thing he's trying here is pleasure. You know, I know some of you've got that, YOLO attitude. You only live once, so eat, drink, and be merry. And you just pursue pleasure. And pleasure doesn't even necessarily need to be anything immoral or bad. This could be things that you actually like. Restaurants, connecting with friends, watching TV, going to restaurants. But it can also be things that are immoral. The things that people get into. And you tell yourself, anything goes. So long as there is consent, or so long as nobody gets hurt, anything goes. Everything is fair game. And you live your life for pleasure. You live your life for the weekend. But then, like the preacher man, it doesn't satisfy. So you might even drown the pain and the emptiness with alcohol. But it still doesn't satisfy. You tell yourself, life is meaningless. And that word meaningless there is talking about vapor. It's talking about breath. It's talking about, it's not weighty. It's inconsequential. It's absurd. It's like, if life is all about just pursuing pleasure, if I'm only here for the YOLO attitude, then life is meaningless. And at this point, let me just speak a little bit to the young people. And it's not because it's only the young people that pursue pleasure. No, older people pursue pleasure too. But older people have pursued pleasure, and it has not worked out well. And some are living with the consequences of it right now. So they know that life is not all about pleasure. But I know if you're young, probably your parents have told you, your teachers have told you, your youth workers have told you that there is, the pleasure brings emptiness, but you don't believe them. So you want to experiment for yourself. You want to party all night long. You want to try drugs, alcohol, one-night stands, porn, all these things. But hear from the preacher man, he tried it, and it does not bring the fulfillment that you're looking. It gives you emptiness. So if you're young, you're here, I would even encourage you, find an older person in the church. Ask them about this. And they will tell you, 20, 30 years ago, they also experimented with pleasure, and it did not end well. It was meaningless. Why don't you learn from their mistakes? Why don't you learn from the preacher man and just know that pleasure does not bring the fulfillment you need? But some of you, you'll be like, I've got a little bit more sense. So you're like, no, I'm not going to go for pleasure, but I'm going to go for achievement. I want to achieve great things. And this can be like idolatry in the West. We want to pass our exams. We just want to get that next promotion. We just want to go up that corporate ladder. We just want to start that business. We're entrepreneurial. We just want to achieve, 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 achieve. To the point where it becomes a god. But guess what? The preacher man tried it as well. So listen to what he says in verse 4. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself, planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs of water grooves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers and a harem as well, the delights of a man's heart. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem for me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. So if you want to talk about achievement, the preacher man achieved it all. And if you want to modernize that, maybe you can substitute the horses for Teslas, and he had hotels. He was rich. He achieved more than any of us will ever achieve. But guess what he discovered when he got to the end in verse 11? But when I surveyed all that my hands had made and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless. A chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. So push back against those people that are trying to sell you a lie and trying to define you by what you do. Isn't this the first thing that we ask each other when we are in company and we don't know each other? It's always, what do you do? What do you work at? As if you've achieved something in your career, your job, your businesses, then it's worthwhile. But that is a lie. That is trying to use a suit to block a bullet. And at this point, let me speak a little bit to the parents. I know you tell your kids, study hard, work hard, pass your exam, get that good job. And it's good advice. But I hope you put a caveat in that. That even if you don't get that job, even if you don't pass that exam, it doesn't mean that your life is a failure. Because your child has been created by God. So it's not all about getting that job and passing that exam. Life is more than that. So those are just by two things that people go for. They don't work, but you can substitute it for many things. It could be even earthly relationships. It could be fame. It could be power. It could be whatever that you dream about, you think it brings fulfillment. It does not bring fulfillment, and life is not about that. But now we're going to switch gears. We're going to go try and see, okay, at the end of all this. So if you want to, I would encourage you to read the book of Ecclesiastes, because he tried it all. He tried it all. But guess what his conclusion was? In Ecclesiastes chapter 12, in the next slide. Not only was the teacher or the preacher wise, but he also imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and he searched out and set in order many proverbs. The teacher searched to find just the right words, and what he wrote was upright and true. The words of the wise are like gods. Their collected sayings like firmly embedded nails given by one shepherd. Be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them, of making many books. There is no end, and much study wearies the body. You would know this if you've read any self-help books. There is no end to the self-help books. Now, all has been heard. Here's the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandment, for this is the duty of all mankind. So I'll say that again. Fear God and keep all his commandment, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. So what is the meaning of life? According to the preacher man, it is to fear God. In other words, if you, depending on your church tradition, you might say something like to glorify God. And what does that glorify mean? It means it's to worship God. And maybe you prefer something like life is all about having a relationship with God. You see, that is the meaning of life. When you pick up the Bible and read, you will discover that it is all about having a relationship with God. That is the start point. And if you're missing that start point, then everything else is meaningless. It will not make sense. Everything is meaningless without Jesus. That is what you need. Without that, you'll be restless. You know, like when you've got an interview, or if you've got an exam, or if you've got a kid on sugar, they're just restless. That's what happens if you're missing Jesus. You won't find that answer. And one writer by the name Augustine said this: "You made us for yourself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it rests in you." And that is profound. That is true. You will forever be restless. You will forever not find the meaning of life if you do not discover that. It's not about you to start with. It's about God, because He's your creator. He's your redeemer. And because He's your creator and your redeemer, He sets a purpose for you. And that purpose starts with a relationship with Him. And you might be here and you say, "But I don't have a relationship with God." But you can have one, because He sent His Son to die on the cross, that whosoever believes will not perish but have eternal life, that you will be with Him. But you have to accept that His Son came and died. And Colossians say this, and I didn't even coordinate this with Aaron as well. So God's been working amazing today. Colossians tells us this: "The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation." And on the next slide, "For in Him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through Him and for Him." And that is very important. Everything is created through Him and for Him. So to have purpose, that is where it starts. Then your job, then your family, then your career, fame, whatever comes your way flows from that. If you're missing that piece, you're going to be restless. On the next slide, I don't know if you guys, I'm missing it actually, but there's this drink called Prime. And there's so much hype over this drink because it was started by these influencers, right? These YouTube influencers, KSI and Logan Paul. So there's so much hype. People want to drink this drink. So they sold it in Dunn's, and it was sold out very quickly. So I just was wondering, what is all the hype about? You know, so I went around to all Dunn's stores with my kids looking for the drink, and I couldn't find it. And they're also looking at me like I'm crazy. They're like, "It's gone, man. You needed to be here from the beginning." So, like the preacher man, I sought out to do an experiment. So I bought the drink at like 5 times the price, like 15 euros. I'm kind of slow, but I bought it. And I actually bought it to the youth group. And we did a taste test, you know, where we had all the youth, and you give them cups, and then we put the drink. And then, you know, we count it down, you know, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we all kind of tasted it at the same time. But the reaction to the taste was, it's not all that it's cracked up to be. It didn't satisfy. All the hype of the drink didn't really go with the taste. And this is the same when you try and find the meaning of life in all these other things. They don't deliver on what they promise. They don't deliver on the hype. You've got to go to the real thing. You've got to go to God. And then on the last slide, actually before that, so I want to recommend that book. So if you want to know a bit more about the meaning of life, I recommend that book, or if you don't like reading, you can get the audio book and just listen to it. But this book has sold over like 35 million, and it kind of tells you it's a good book, but that also tells you that a lot of people are searching for the meaning and purpose of life. And that book will start you off on the right way. And in there, the writer says something like this, which is basically the summary of the book and the summary of the sermon. You were made by God and for God. And until you understand that, life will never make sense. Only in God do you discover your origin. Only in God do we discover our origin, our identity, our meaning, our purpose, our significance, and our destiny. And that is very important. You were made by God and for God. So don't miss that step.